Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Hello.
Good evening.
This is the second meeting for members and supporters of the Labour and Exile Network. I'm Esther. I'm on the LIEN steering committee. You're here because presumably you're a member or a supporter, and therefore you align with the LIEN objectives to democratise the party, to readmit unjustly suspended members and stop the witch hunt. But every week we see the party further infringing these principles, and we'll be hearing about some of those things today. This week in my CLP Bristol North West, where the chair and secretary, me, have been suspended, the South West Regional Office has set up an annual general meeting without referring to any of the other elected officers. Those of you who know about what happened in Bristol West will know that this is a really bad idea, really bad for democracy. We also know that this week Ken Loach has written to David Evans to protest about similar shenanigans in Bath, and you can read about that in the Labour briefing of 13th of May. On to the witch hunting. We all know what a witch hunt looks like. Somebody who doesn't like you or your political position deliberately misconstrues something you say, or indeed everything you say, in order to brand you as a racist or something else you're not, in order to get rid of you. This week, Howard Beckett had this treatment, and the party shamefully suspended him. LIEN's statement and a model motion is available on our website, and we can post it in the chat as well, so you can see that and you can share that with your CLP comrades. So thank you very much for coming here this evening. We know there's been a lot on today, lots of Palestine protests, and earlier we were talking about the Queen's speech, where it looks as if there will be a bill to actually make it illegal for public bodies to support BDS. So that's something we definitely need to be picking up. We've got 4 main items this evening. We've got good time allocated for contributions from people on the floor, from everybody here. Also, the steering committee has considered the questions and issues raised at our last meeting in March, and I hope that you'll see when we get the feedback from the working groups how we've been picking up some of those issues and addressing many of them. So first of all, this evening we have Tina Werkman, and Tina's going to be talking about what's happening in the Labour Party. Over to you, Tina. Thank you.
Hiya. Yes, sorry, this is my 4th meeting of the day, so I'm trying to keep up the energy. It's an important meeting, of course, like they all are. I wanted to look today at the state of the Labour Party. What does it mean in terms of our engagement with it, and what we can actually do now when it comes to the Labour Party? Because I think it's not quite as bad as it might appear at first glance. So comrades know how bad the Labour Party did in the elections. There's 4 investigations going on against Boris Johnson. There's sleaze, corruption, with contracts of worth billions being given to friends, etc. And what does Keir Starmer do? He's chiefly interested in building national unity with Boris Johnson, and I think he's been pretty badly punished for his lack of opposition that he's presenting today. To be honest, the only thing he has done really with gusto is attack the left, and he's basically continuing the anti-Semitism smear campaign in the left. With Esther mentioned, Howard Beckett's suspension is very much part of this whole trend. And of course, Keir Starmer has made all of this worse. He's blindly accepted any demands put by him by the Board of Deputies and the Zionist lobby. He's expanded the purge that was sadly, and we have to be honest about that, started by the Corbyn leadership, by including all those who dare to speak out on anything really at the moment, demanding free speech, for example, over Corbyn's suspension, or the one-sided report commissioned by the Equalities and Human Rights, published by the Equality and Human Rights Commission. That's enough to get you suspended. Apart from that, he's done bugger all, really. He's useless, he's bland, he's got no vision, he's not even a caretaker. And I think that's probably one of the few things the left and the right agree with at the moment when it comes to how useless Starmer is. He's tried very unsuccessfully, I think, to blame this problem on Long Corbyn, not very convincingly, especially if we look at the results in Hartlepool, where in 2017, under Corbyn, Labour won 22,000 votes in Hartlepool and 52% of the votes. In 2021, now under Starmer, Labour won 8,500 votes, 29% of the votes. And even looking at the 2017 general election, Labour did very well compared to how Labour did now. That was, of course, before the anti-Semitism smear campaign and the witch hunt against the left and Corbyn really took off. And that has, of course, affected the election results as well as Brexit. There's no doubt Brexit will have played another role. But for us, I think it's quite important to understand what went wrong over the sort of anti-Semitism smear campaign, because that's still going on. Had the Corbyn leadership stood up to those false charges and exposed them as what they were, nonsense, the Labour Party was not run over by anti-Semites, etc., we could be in quite a different situation today. Yes, I've just looked, and thank you for Esther for pointing this out. I had missed that the BDS is being attacked in the Queen's speech, and we really have to get something done about that, a campaign. So it's basically, because the government has accepted IRA, is the logic of the government's ruling here is, because it's accepted IRA, it's concerned that councils do anything that opposes IRA, and that includes boycotts, which may legitimize anti-Semitism. So in a nutshell, the BDS movement encourages anti-Semitism, which comes straight. I mean, this is part of the result of the ongoing attacks on free speech, resulting from the defeat of the Corbyn leadership. And we have to be very clear about this is partly self-made and partly comes from a failure to take this up from the Corbyn leadership. But the good thing about all of this is, and Starmer and the Labour Party doing rather badly in the elections, is that this means that things remain very fluid in the Labour Party, I believe. There have been talks about a leadership challenge from the right chiefly, but if there's a leadership challenge, that also means that a left contender could stand. And there certainly is discussions going on about that, as I understand it, on the Socialist Campaign Group to stand somebody. This does, of course, present us with some difficulties in terms of where is the left and where is the Socialist Campaign Group, and will they do something different this time? Have we learned any lessons from what went on in the last 5 years? And that is a tricky one. There isn't much evidence, I'm afraid, that the establishment left and the Socialist Campaign Group of Labour MPs have learned much in the last 5 years. There are discussions going on at the moment, which I'm involved in as the representative from the Labour Left Alliance, which is there's a few organizations, 25 Labour Left organizations holding discussions on the future of the Labour Left, which I should say it's a good thing this is taking place, and it's an encouraging thing. There was one meeting today, 2 hours of not very encouraging discussions, I have to say, though the LLA will bring something out in. I'm sorry, my daughter has just arrived. 1 second, I just have to let her in, just a second. I'm just speaking, okay.
When Tina's finished speaking, we will take some contributions from the floor. So you can be thinking about what contributions you'd like to make. Go on, Tina.
Yeah, so the Labour Left Alliance will report on these in the very near future. What I would say, though, is things remain very fluid and in flux. And I think, and most comrades on the LIEN steering committee would, I think, urge comrades to not leave the party now, because things are fluid and there is still an opportunity to influence things, I believe. So don't leave if you can stomach it. It's not a condition of LIEN membership, of course. It's just a recommendation. I think it's important that we are where things are moving, and where you can influence things politically in the most efficient way. Of course, because of the electoral system, I believe the Labour Party remains at the moment the only serious show in town from a working class perspective. There are lots of small groups, left groups, lots of sects, but not really a socialist party worthy of the name. Just a second. Sorry, my daughter's really loud. So there's lots of sects, but not really a working class socialist organization worthy of the name, I think. And because of the affiliation of the unions to the Labour Party, it remains what Lenin called a long time ago, but it's still quite a good description of the Labour Party as a bourgeois workers' party. You have two poles, the bourgeois pole and the working class pole, reflecting the class struggle, and it was certainly reflected in the last 5 years, 6 years, isn't it? So I think it's a very important arena where the class struggle takes place, and we can't really run away from the class struggle. We have to be where it takes place. It remains an important arena. As I say, there is a danger that the official left will simply repeat the mistakes that have been made over the 5 years, the last 6 years. Which is where organizations like LIEN, LLA, etc. come in. We have to look at our forces critically, self-critically, and say what went wrong and not repeat it. I think chasing the keys to Downing Street number 10 was the main issue for Corbyn and for McDonnell, especially John McDonnell, who bent over backwards to appease the right. If we just accept this or that demand by the right, perhaps they'll be quiet and get on board with us. Fat chance. I mean, every step the Corbyn leadership took backwards, every suspension, every expulsion, every lie told over anti-Semitism being ripe in the Labour Party made the right stronger. So unless we learn some serious lessons about that, that you have to take on the right and not appease them, I think we are in a position where we would repeat the same mistakes. Sorry, that was a bit long. I was going to talk more about actually, and I'll come to the end now very soon, what we can actually do. And that's crucial, isn't it? Join Labour in Exile Network, please. We are a membership organization. This is probably going to be the last meeting, the steering committee is discussing this, where we invite supporters and members, but we're hoping that comrades can make a commitment, as well as a financial commitment. It is quite important that we have money that we can spend to support various things coming up, and I'll get to some of this. So please join Labour in Exile Network as a member. Forming shadow CLPs, which we discussed at our first meeting, hugely important. And we're preparing a series of workshops on that, where we hope, that this can be an area where on the left in a CLP locally, members and non-members can get together to fight alongside against what's happening and beyond. You don't have to just concentrate on Labour Party work. We should try to cohere our forces and work inside and outside the Labour Party. If you're still a member of the Labour Party, consider moving a motion of no confidence in Starmer. This has gone through in the last couple of days, 4 or 5 CLPs, I believe. None of them have been suspended yet, so perhaps there's an opening there. Please try and move such motions, and also try and get to Labour Party conference as a delegate ideally, but also I think it's worthwhile coming as a visitor. I get to that. At conference, David Evans will have to be ratified as General Secretary at conference, so there is space to vote against, campaign against his ratification. And imagine even if he is ratified, but only by a vote of 60%, hugely important in terms of what that says about the left not being dead, etc. So it's really important comrades try and go and do that. There's a number of rule changes being put forward by the left. We've put them up on our website, collated them from LIEN as well, one on fast track expulsion, Labour Left Alliance, Socialist Appeal, CLPD. There's a lot of good rule changes going forward. Every CLP can move one. The deadline for those is very soon, though. It's June the 13th or 11th. 11th, sorry, June 11th. So it's fairly soon. So you need to get a move on for rule change motions. However, you can also put forward contemporary motions. A CLB can do both. Contemporary motions, we've published a very good one, which we've helped to draft up, which is to commit the party to ditch the IRA fake definition of anti-Semitism and instead adopt the Jerusalem Declaration, which Tony will talk about in a little bit at time. This is a very important, we've just discussed how IRA has been used to stifle and chill free speech on a number of issues, including, the BDS movement now. So this is quite good. If you are still a member, we've published this online on our website. Please have a look. So there is stuff we can campaign around, etc. Even more exciting, though, I think at Labour Party conference this year, a number of organizations, including LIEN and Labour Against the Witch Hunt, LLA, have come together to book a place, book a venue for 3 days, 3 whole days, from morning to evening. We'll be putting on events, left-wing events, cultural events, debates, discussions, book launches, etc., from a perspective of free speech and open discussion and standing up to the witch hunt. This will take place parallel to the Labour Party conference in Brighton in a very central venue. There's going to be a launch event, write it down, May the 28th at 6 p.m. With Jackie Walker, Chris Williamson, Carrie-Anne Mendoza and Tony Greenstein, a number of other people talking and presenting this launch event, which will be very exciting. So we're hoping that comrades will come along to Brighton as delegates, as visitors, as just coming to our event on the left, and not give up. Keep organizing, keep collectively discussing issues, and not being, demoralized and sent into all different directions. Thanks.
Thank you, Tina. There's been quite a few comments in the chat about how the broad left might organise, linking with the campaign group, for example. So let's take some contributions from the floor about the Labour Party and in responding to some of the issues that Tina's raised there. Can you put your hand up, please, if you want to ask a question or make a comment? Roger, just asking you to unmute.
Yes, thank you, comrades. I'd just like to say, first of all, I don't know how many comrades went to the meeting of the Socialist Campaign Group, so-called, on Wednesday. I have to say that I was so angry. I felt outraged because what we got was 2.5 hours of one campaign group MP after another, all telling us not to leave the Labour Party. No strategy, no campaign against Starmer, simply stay in. Now, what does that say to the thousands of us who've been excluded from the Labour Party and do not have the option of staying in? And I want to tell you what we're doing in my area, Newham. We have 2 CLPs, West Ham and East Ham CLP, both of which were suspended without warning just overnight. And what we've done is reconstitute ourselves as Newham Socialist Labour and to continue our campaigning work. It's one of the most deprived boroughs in the country, and we're not giving up the campaigning for the people in the area. But what we're also doing is, since the campaign group are not fighting back, the rank and file need to start a fight back. And to do that, we're circulating in the next few days an open letter calling for a rank and file conference of the party where we can get together, vote no confidence in Starmer, refuse to ratify the appointment of David Evans, and to convene a real fight back, to convene a conference. We want to address this to Labour parties and to Labour Party members, including the suspended and expelled up and down the country, to the campaign group MPs, to Jeremy Corbyn, and to trade union, to the trade unions, and say we need to take control of our party out of the hands of these pirates who boarded it and who are destroying it. So please watch out for our letter, and please, when you get hold of it, please do sign it and circulate it. We hope that we could get thousands of people to build up a campaign that we can begin the real fight back. It's not going to come from the MPs in Parliament. That was made absolutely clear on Wednesday. Thanks, comrade.
Thank you very much, Roger. We'll start a list then. That's the first action then, Roger's letter. Thank you very much, and that's really encouraging. We've got Eric. Eric, we can't see you. You are unmuted.
What have I not? Let's have a look. What have I not pressed? I obviously haven't pressed the right thing.
You start your video.
Okay. I'm starting my video now.
Yeah, there you are. Yeah, do you want to make your contribution? Thank you.
Yeah, I was not frightening you too much. Look, it might be my age, but I feel that we're really at the moment. I understand the management issues, and I agree they're big issues. But we seem to have lost the fact that Labour Party is a socialist party. Now, I've asked Keir Starmer, emailed him and others many times, what are we? We are a socialist party. If we hammer that home, youngsters probably don't, because I'm old, but it's as it was agreed in the 45 election that we believe in state-owned and run major services. That seems quite sensible to me. We do believe in nationally run and nationally organised main service industries and the NHS. And that, because after all, what's the choices have we got? We're either going to be totally privatised, or we're going to have socialism, or we have what the Liberals try to give, a middle ground where we know what happened there, don't we? So I don't quite understand why the party isn't pressing. We're getting caught up, and I think the media are doing that deliberately. Love it, don't they? Tory media love, oh, there's confusion without who manages the Labour Party, who's this, that, and the other. And youngsters do, I'm sure youngsters don't understand that socialism is about we the people owning and managing via our governments the main service industries in the NHS. Young people, I feel, have grown up with the belief that, yes, all these service industries may be owned by international companies who live abroad or whatever, manage abroad. And I feel we just got to ask the questions of our leaders, are you really a socialist? Do you believe in government run and owned major services and NHS? To my way of thinking, that's what the Labour Party is all about.
Thank you, Eric. That's great. I've just put a link in to join the Socialist Health Association, because that's what the Socialist Association is trying to achieve for the NHS. So thank you for that contribution. We've got so I've got three more. We'll have to and comrades, if you can keep to a minute or so. We've got Edward Davis. Can you unmute your contribution, please?
Hi, thank you. I would just like to raise a few other points about, more specifically, about how to remove the leadership of the current right-wing leadership, and more importantly, to make sure they can't get back in. Is that, first of all, the best idea with that would be mandatory reselection. Because fundamentally all representatives should represent the rank and file of the Labour Party, and it should be as easy as possible for the rank and file of the party to remove their representatives when they no longer represent them. And secondarily, and I think this is a very vital point to make, MPs should be restricted to the wage of an average skilled worker. This would outright kill any careerism present in the Labour Party. I don't know how much Keir Starmer would want to stay, knowing he can't make he would making less than he would be as a lawyer, but it would be absolutely vital to make sure that workers never that representatives never seek to make petty careerist choices for their own personal gain. Thank you.
Thank you very much. They'll be added to the list. So we've got two more questions then, or contributions before we move on to Tony. Vic Dale, and then we'll have Halima.
Hi, comrades. Just so it's clear, I represent Socialist Appeal. That's our paper. and we are part of the broad left campaign to get rid of Starmer. And I think it has to be understood right from the start that we live in a two-class society, a capitalist society, and the biggest threat to capitalism is the trade unions and the Labour Party, which is based on the trade unions. There have been several attempts to break that link. And Starmer, there's no good appealing to him or trying to straighten him out. He is a stooge. He is a paid agent of the ruling class, an infiltrator, as are the 160 treacherous Labour MPs that stabbed Corbyn in the back. Now, there is a fight back going on in the party, but it's something we have to build. We have to build the broad left, and the campaign to get rid of Starmer has already been launched. Now, I actually am on the Isle of Wight, and I've presented a motion of no confidence in Keir Starmer. Now, they know me of old. I'm a Marxist, and you know, there's a wall of opposition I face. Not on this issue. They are seriously considering that motion, and they're going to get advice on whether it's going to get them kicked out of the party or not. But there's no political opposition. So if the Isle of Wight can do that, then we can do that in our constituencies. And so, you know, solidarity with those who have been suspended or kicked out. We'll get you back in if we possibly can, but we've got to get rid of Starmer. And you know, there is a danger that the right wing is so enraged by Starmer and his ham-handed handling of the elections and the party that they could mount a campaign to get him out and install a clone in his place. Well, we don't want that. We want a broad left to get rid of Starmer. Thank you, comrades.
Yeah, it looks like everyone wants to get rid of Starmer, poor chap. Let's move on. Thank you, Vic. Let's move on to Halima. We can't see. I don't think we can see you, Halima.
No, I have my
please.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Like everyone else, I agreed with what you all said, and especially what Tina said. I'm openly already coming for Keir Starmer, and I want him out. I have my hashtags. I don't care. But what I will say is that we're not even allowed in our CLB to talk about to return Jeremy Corbyn his whip. Because if we do, then we're going to get suspended or, you know, whatever spell. How do we know everything that everyone is saying is good, but it's really good that we need to plan and find out, like, talk to the socialist MPs, how they will support us and what they will compromise. Because like Tina, I was in the meeting, it wasn't a plan for those who got expelled from the party. It was really good everything they were saying, but there is not a solid plan. How far can we fight back and fight for the manifesto that Jeremy Corbyn built? And I would say also, I'm from also Newham. I'm not based there at the moment, but what Roger said, Roger, we need to take responsibility for the left in Newham. That's not entirely true, because our own left people did wrong in our CLBs and did fraud as well. Misogynist, there's a lot of allegation. And so the first time Newham got suspended, it got suspended on Robin Wells' time. So let's not mislead the issues that we have in Newham. It's quite big, and it's not pretty when it comes to women issues. So I just want to say that. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Lima, for that upbeat contribution. Thank you. So we're now going to move on to a discussion about the Jerusalem definition of anti-Semitism versus IRA. Tina's already spoken about some of the chilling impacts of IRA, and we know about that from our experience in the Labour Party. Also, I'm aware that the Socialist Health Association has adopted the IRA definition as well. So Tony's going to introduce a discussion about abandoning IRA and adopting Jerusalem Declaration. Also, we do have a model motion, which is linked in the agenda and it will post on the chat. So over to you, Tony. Thank you.
Tony,
Right,
can you adjust your camera a little bit?
Yeah, move a bit sideways. Yeah. That's better. Yeah, you're in the centre now. Thank you. You're in the
okay, thank you, comrades. I want to share my screen so that people can actually see the Jerusalem Declaration at some point. So if whoever is in charge of the technical can arrange that, I would be grateful.
I think you were.
Go on, yeah, you can.
Yeah, you should be able to.
Okay, thank you. I'll do it soon, but not immediately.
Okay.
If there was one single issue that discredited Jeremy Corbyn, and by association the rest of the left, it was the false and fake anti-Semitism campaign. And that's not because on the doorstep in 2019, people raised Jeremy Corbyn's anti-Semitism. They didn't. Virtually nobody did. But it undermined him because it made him seem weak, flabby, weak-willed, unable to answer, dodgy, forever apologizing, and so on. In essence, it destroyed his credibility. And so the first question I suppose we need to ask is, was Labour anti-Semitic? Was it overrun by anti-Semitism? Did it have an anti-Semitism problem? Unfortunately, the majority of the left, the Socialist Campaign Group, Momentum under John Lansman, and many other elements bought into this false and fake narrative, which was really a political hoax. It was a kind of confidence trick of the century, but people bought it. And if I can give it an analogy, and it's one I've used before because I think it's quite apposite, was there anti-Semitism? Were there anti-Semites in the Labour Party? Yes, a handful. I think there were 2 or 3 Holocaust deniers who were eventually expelled. But, you know, I mean, there are Holocaust deniers throughout society. They're not a very large percentage, but there are a few anti-Semites. And the analogy I use is when I say that a party of over 500,000 will undoubtedly have some people who are paedophiles. I mean, that's an unfortunate fact of life, and it's not just the Labour Party, of course, every party would have. But would anyone therefore say that the Labour Party was overrun by paedophilia? Or would even anybody say that they will not rest until every last paedophile was expelled, like Tom Watson? And the answer is, of course not. It wasn't a problem. And to be blunt, anti-Semitism in the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn was probably less than has ever been in its existence. And there were times when it was actually quite a severe phenomenon. So that is really the context in which the IHRA, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition, was drawn up. Now, the argument for it was that this was the right of the Jewish community to define its own oppression, leaving aside the fact that the Jewish community or Jews in Britain are not oppressed. That in itself is a lie. The IHRA was drawn up at Jerusalem's Stephen Roth and Cantor Institute at Tel Aviv University. It was motivated by someone called Dina Porat, who is the chief Holocaust historian of Yad Vashem, which is a Holocaust memorial propaganda museum in Jerusalem. And the purpose of the IHRA was quite clear, and it's even clearer, I think, today with what's going on in Gaza and the pogroms in Israel itself. It was a definition of anti-Semitism designed to conflate opposition to Zionism, opposition to what Israel does, with anti-Semitism. In other words, it rested on the basis that Israel was a personification of what it means to be Jewish. There was an identity of interest between being Jewish and supporting Israel. And if you opposed Israel, if you singled out Israel, then you were singling out Jews. And therefore that was anti-Semitic. That was the whole basis of it. It was a completely dishonest narrative. Unfortunately, Corbyn, Lansman, John McDonnell in particular, he was one of the most guilty of all, bought into that. And Corbyn himself, at the end of 2016, adopted the 38-word definition in the IHRA, which really makes absolutely no sense if you go to it and read it. In 2018, September 2018, after extreme pressure a massive campaign waged not only by the Board of Deputies, but by the Tories, by the Tory press, and so on. The Labour Party adopted the IHRA with its 11 examples, 7 of which referred to Israel. The reason why it was pushed so fiercely was because it conflated anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. And so the question really comes of the Jerusalem Declaration, which was only surfaced in March of this year, drawn up by a group of mainly Jewish scholars and academics. Not all of them, I don't think any of them were anti-Zionist, but it's quite a clear definition. And I'd just like to have a look at it if I can share my screen, and watch out, because I'm not sure it's going to this is going to work, but anyway, I'll give it a try. Can everyone see that? Yes. Okay. The Jerusalem Declaration and Anti-Semitism, and you can see it's at https://jerusalemdeclaration.org if you want to go. It has a preamble, and then it has a definition. And unlike the 38-word nebulous definition of the IHRA, which defines anti-Semitism in terms of a perception, a certain perception, which may be considered hate of Jews, but it also may be all sorts of other things. This definition is quite clear. It's very close to the Oxford English Dictionary definition. And it simply says anti-Semitism is discrimination, prejudice, hostility, or violence against Jews as Jews, or Jewish institutions as Jewish. One can quibble about parts of it, but I think it's pretty simple, and it is about anti-Semitism. It's not about Zionism or anti-Zionism. The declaration has 3 parts. The first is a general part, A, and you can see it is racist to essentialize a particular character trait. It goes into what anti-Semitism is in classic anti-Semitism. That is the idea that Jews are linked to the forces of evil. I don't agree with that, but anyway, I mean, one can debate it. 3, anti-Semitism can be manifested in words, visual images, and deeds. Well, it can be, but the way it's used is not in that way. In fact, that's distinctly unhelpful. Anti-Semitism could be direct, etc., denying or minimizing the Holocaust. Well, again, many Holocaust deniers, of course, are vehemently anti-Semitic, but unfortunately, there are now many Holocaust deniers who are simply stupid or misled or whatever. B, and it gives examples that are on the face of it anti-Semitic. And there again, you see number 6, applying the symbols, images, and negative stereotypes of classic anti-Semitism. I disagree with that one because, for instance, one of the classic symbols of anti-Semitism is that Jews poison wells of non-Jews. And that was undoubtedly in the Middle Ages an anti-Semitic allegation, which cost many people their lives. However, today, if you accuse Israel of poisoning the water sources of Palestinians, that is actually a factual observation. It's correct. So it can't possibly be anti-Semitic unless you believe that anti-Semitism can also be true. Holding Jews collectively responsible for Israel's conduct, I don't think anyone disagrees with that. And there are others which I don't really agree with, but they're fairly innocuous. And then the important part is C, Israel and Palestine, examples that on the face of it are not anti-Semitic. 11, supporting the Palestinian demand for justice, criticizing or opposing Zionism as a form of nationalism, evidence-based criticism of Israel, and that's really important. Boycott, divestment and sanctions, again, is not on the face of it anti-Semitic, and political speech doesn't have to be measured, proportionate, etc. So all in all, I would say, and I'll end the screen share now, so you can see me instead. That may not be a bonus, but I'm sorry about that. On the face of it, the Jerusalem Declaration, although I wouldn't argue for it to be adopted in the case of an organization which hasn't adopted any definition, I think where organizations like the Labour Party have adopted the IHRA, this definition, which is supported by over 200 Jewish academics and many others, is infinitely preferable. Why? Because it deals with anti-Semitism, not anti-Zionism. Now, of course, you could ask, and Chair, please give me a time warning if I'm going over time, because I have that tendency. On the face of it, there really is no need to define anti-Semitism. I can't see a reason. And again, the example I give is my father, despite his many faults, when he was young, he took part in the Battle of Cable Street against the fascists, Oswald Mosley, in 1936. And he described to me some of the experiences of anti-Semitism in the East End at the time. Now, you know, when he went on a demonstration or fought the fascists, he didn't need to carry in his pocket a definition of anti-Semitism. He knew extremely well what anti-Semitism was, just as someone today who goes onto the streets to fight racism against Black or Muslim people doesn't need a definition. You know what it is. If people want to define something, it's usually because they have a hidden agenda. And that, in essence, was what, of course, the IHRA was about. And it's unfortunate that trade unions in particular, who have almost a majority on the Labour National Executive Committee, supported the adoption of the IHRA, and that includes Unite. I mean, I've been in the correspondence with Len McCluskey and others in the Unite Executive about it. I mean, they're not very forthcoming as to what they did and why they did it. But I certainly think one of the questions that should be asked of Howard Beckett, who is the left candidate for the Unite General Secretary, is, do you continue to support the IHRA? Because the purpose of the IHRA is quite clear. It's to defend things that Israel is doing, like, for example, bombing Gaza, like, for instance, the continuing confiscation of Palestinian land, whether it's in Sheikh Jarrah in East Jerusalem or within Israel itself. The IHRA basically says you can criticize Israel as long as your criticism is on the same level and the same type as your criticism of any other liberal democratic state. But of course, the point is, Israel is not a liberal democratic state. For Palestinians, whether it's inside Israel or in the occupied territories, the Israeli state is a police state. It is a Jewish supremacist state. And we've seen that. For instance, I watched a video only yesterday of a demonstration by Arab Palestinian students at the University of the Negev in Beersheba. The police went onto the campus to basically beat them up. And then when they actually escaped, they were then attacked by right-wing Jewish students as well. So the idea that Palestinians have any democratic freedoms within Israel is and always has been a myth. Yet the IHRA is based on the idea that Israel is a liberal state. It isn't. It's a Jewish state. It's an ethno-nationalist state. And being a Jewish state, it is inherently racist, because it's a state of the Jewish people, which incidentally doesn't just include Jews in Israel. It includes me and anyone else in this audience who is Jewish. That's why it is fundamentally racist. So the IHRA should be part of our campaign. We have to get rid of it. It was adopted by the Zionists, the Board of Deputies, the same Board of Deputies which is supporting Israel today in its bombing campaign against Gaza, precisely because it's a weapon to use against people who support the Palestinians. And that's why the Jerusalem Declaration on anti-Semitism is infinitely preferable, despite its faults, and it does have faults. The absurdity, unfortunately, is Corbyn brought into the narrative. When people accused Labour of anti-Semitism, and Corbyn in particular, Corbyn took it as a personal attack. It wasn't. What they were saying is he was a supporter of the Palestinians. He never got it. But the fact is, I doubt if there's a single Palestinian solidarity activist in Britain today who hasn't at some stage or another been accused of anti-Semitism. That is their main weapon, because it's very difficult to justify jailing and detaining and blindfolding and beating up children as young as 12 in the occupied territories. It's far easier to attack the messenger rather than the message. And Corbyn got himself into just absurd difficulties. He came out with this idea of denialism, which is, if you deny you're an anti-Semite, then that's proof you are an anti-Semite, which is a wonderful idea. It's like going into court and you're asked how you plead and you say not guilty, and then the judge remarks, Or if you plead not guilty, then that's proof that you are guilty. It's a Kafkaesque world. And that's what the IHRA is. It's internally contradictory. And in fact, it's anti-Semitic because it assumes all Jews support Israel. So I'll leave it at there because I've probably gone on far too long. But I think the Jerusalem Declaration is important. And the fact that the Zionists have reacted to it with extreme hostility, the Community Security Trust, which is a branch of Mossad in Britain, and many other organizations that campaign against anti-Semitism and the Board of Deputies, proves to me that it is a useful weapon to use against those who want to close down free speech on
Thank
you.
Exactly, and it's very much aligned with LIEN's objectives. So I thank you, Tony. I can see from the chat that a lot of people found that really, really useful and interesting. Thank you. And we've got 10 minutes or so now for contributions. Said, what contributions do you mean? I mean contributions to the discussion from the floor. So please raise your hands if you'd like to ask a question of Tony or make your own comments. And Stan, you've got your hand up. Do you want to go ahead? Please unmute.
There we are.
There you are.
Unmute. There we are. Good. Yeah, thank you. Yes, I mean, Tony, I like Tony's spiel about the IHRA, of course, especially the part where he argued that we don't need a definition of anti-Semitism, which I think is right. It's missing the point to think that we do, because it's just an accusation that's easily made. And it seemed to have worked brilliantly for sacking people from the Labour Party and suspending and expelling and so on. I don't, my personal view is that we don't need another definition. So Jerusalem Declaration may be better, but so what? It's not what it's all about. You know, up to here with definition argument about anti-Semitism. Actually, it's simply a question of the Labour Party and British capitalism being in line, keeping on side with America, because America is a top dog state, and in their politics, they got Britain as an ally whenever they go on another military adventure, and that's what it's all about. It's all about keeping in with the pecking order of international capitalism. So, and along with that, I want to say that I don't think it's right to say that anti-Semitism was the main issue in losing the election in 2019, or the low votes that Labour got just now. You know, I think that trying to get rid of Starmer is ill-conceived because you'll only get somebody worse. At the moment, we've had the Socialist Campaign Group. I remember it was for a long time, it was John McDonnell standing for leader. And then he let go one year when Diane Abbott stood. And then Jeremy was the last one to have a go when the others had all tried out, you know, and so their politics, their approach was totally wrong. We just experienced that with the manifesto for the many and the two left-wing leaders of John and Jeremy together, and they totally messed up. And there was no challenge to the way that we're ruled. Jeremy went and joined the Privy Council. He wouldn't challenge the monarchy. He wouldn't challenge the House of Lords and say we should get rid of it and so on. The idea that you could deliver the economic policy to make a better life for working people without challenging the power of the state is a massive mistake. And that actually represents the Labourite politics, if you like, of the official left. So the Socialist Campaign Group is a busted flush. And if you want to have a contest with a left leader, then I can't see one at the moment. You look at all of the Socialist Campaign Group, the MPs that are there at the moment, there's no way that you could put a trust in them and say that we want them to be leader. We've got to do a lot more rebuilding first. The real reason why we lost the election in 2019 was Brexit. It was Boris came in earlier in 2019 after Theresa May's hopeless leadership, and Boris came in and said, get Brexit done. What the Labour Party had done was to give a promise to abide by the decision of the referendum. Now, referendums are always bad news, and this one was bad news in itself. It divides everything. So the referendum has divided the working class, it's divided the whole of British society, and it's divided the left. There's a couple of comrades from Socialist Appeal just now speaking. They were, of course, on the Brexit side of the referendum. Others on the left are on the Remain side. So the left is totally divided over that. We've got a hopeless division that needs to be sorted out. And to go running for a leadership contest in this situation is not going to help at all. Who do you want in? You know, you want to get rid of Cameron. We had Cameron before, and it gave way. It's no use replacing him. He should have been called out. We should have said that the referendum is bad news, and we don't accept the result of a referendum. We want representative democracy instead. And the Labour Party should have said we boycott this referendum. Now we've got an example now, because Boris is saying that if there's another Scottish referendum organised by the Scottish Parliament, the Tories will boycott it, and I think Labour will boycott it as well. Boycott would have been a good idea.
Yeah, thanks, Stan. So I've got two more people who want to speak. We've got Edward and then Dave. Edward, go ahead, please.
Yes, hi. I just think I might want to just clarify the position of Socialist Appeal on Brexit quickly. We were not in favour nor against the Brexit. What our analysis of Brexit was this, is that the British working class has no future under capitalism in or without the European Union. Frankly, the only and once again, what we said was an exit under a Tory government would be nothing more than an opportunity to attack workers' rights, and remaining under the EU Commission would be once again an attack on workers' rights, but through the EU. Our same thing is that there was no future for the British working class except through a socialist revolution. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you, Edward. On to Dave. Will you unmute, please, Dave? And then we'll come back to Tony.
Yeah, hi all. This is just responding to Tony's point about the Jerusalem Declaration which I've read. And I think I would have accepted the first part of the declaration if it didn't put in the parentheses about issues around Jewish institutions. It just completely muddies the waters beyond any point that you can get into any sensible discussion about it. So my overall view is it's another definition with a whole range of examples, many of which still relate to the state of Israel, which don't take us very far. I grant it's better than the original 38-word declaration of definition of the IHRA, but I've also read quite a lot from Palestinian friends about how they said, what the hell has Israel got to do with issues of anti-Semitism? Or put it this way, why is it that we always have to bring the issues of Israel into issues around anti-Semitism? They're completely separate issues. And we've allowed ourselves to be drawn down this road of assuming that there must be some linkage. So all those people that like to claim that Israel is an expression of Jewishness, somehow it's innate, are emboldened every time we have a debate about it. They're completely separate, in my view. And that I think is where we're in a bit of a cul-de-sac. So I personally agree with those people who say we don't need another definition. We actually just need to scrap IHRA because if you just look in any piece of dictionary about anti-Semitism, you'll see something which is about prejudice or hostility to Jews as Jews. That's all you need.
Sure. Yeah. I think we're rapidly reaching consensus that we don't need any definitions. Actually, we've got Janet as well who wants to speak. So, Janet, if you can go ahead, and then we'll come back to Tony. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Janet.
Hi, sorry, I'm trying to start my video. You've got me. Hi, everyone. Yeah. Thank you. I want to ask a question about the term Zionism. I don't know very much about this, but I'm just trying to understand more. So forgive me if I say anything that is wrong or upsets anyone. I sort of think my understanding of Zionism is it was the idea that Jewish people should have a homeland. And that idea in itself doesn't seem to be something that's wrong. But what has now happened is that has been taken over by the Israeli government and has ended up being the terrible mess that we have now with the situation where, well, that we all know that with Palestine. But that if we are talking about anti-Zionism, that there is some worry that we are denying the idea that Jewish people should be entitled to somewhere that they would be safe. I think that's a question. I think.
Yeah, understood. Understood. Okay.
Thank
Thank you, Janet. And we'll go back to Tony now. If you can pick that issue up as well, Tony. Thank
yes,
you.
no, it's a very important.
It is.
Question. I obviously don't have a great deal of time to explain. Basically, Zionism arose as a result of anti-Semitism. It was a particular reaction amongst Jewish people. It was a distinctly minority reaction as well. It was a reaction, in essence, of the Jewish petty bourgeoisie, who on the one hand didn't feared the workers, on the other hand were in competition with non-Jews. It is fundamentally reactionary because, as Janet said, it's based on the idea that Jews need a homeland where they can be safe. And my response to that is, Jews have a home, it's where they actually live. My home is in Britain, it's not in Israel. The idea that Jews should move to Israel or move to Palestine as it was then, and then create their own state, was a colonial idea, a settler colonial idea. It wasn't a solution to anti-Semitism in any sense, shape or form. On the contrary, the anti-Semites also said that Jews don't belong and Jews should form their own state, which is why there was a symmetry between Zionism and anti-Semitism. And it's now played itself out in Israel, because the principles in Israel of a Jewish state are that people who are not Jewish, that is the indigenous population, are second-class citizens, or better still, they shouldn't even be there. And that is the whole point. So anti-Zionism is a form of anti-racism. And Zionism from the start has been a racist ideology. There was nothing socialist or left-wing about Zionism at its origins, although the Zionists often try to claim that. That is really it in a nutshell. Can I deal with what Stan and one other questioner asked? He said, we don't need a definition of anti-Semitism. That's exactly what I said. Of course, we don't need a definition of anti-Semitism, but we have to start from where we are. We can't start from where we would like to be. The fact is that 200 or 300 local authorities have adopted it. All the political parties virtually have adopted it. Many other institutions have adopted it. So in a battle against the IHRA, the Jerusalem Declaration, for all of its faults, is a very useful weapon to adopt, because otherwise all we can say is that we oppose the IHRA. If we can put something in its place which is innocuous, which is what the Jerusalem Declaration is, that is far, far better. And given that it was drawn up by people who are Holocaust scholars and historians and so on who are Jewish, I think it's a very important weapon in our arsenal. And to simply dispose of it, to discard it, I think is absurd. You're not living in the real world. The real world is the IHRA has been adopted by and large throughout society. The question is how we get rid of it. And the JDA is an important part of that. That is precisely why the Zionists have come out so fiercely against it. If it was useless or irrelevant, then the Zionists wouldn't bother with it. Clearly, they don't like it. And the fact that they don't like it, I think, is a very good argument why we should support it. Support it critically, but support it nonetheless. Yes. The final thing, which again Stan argued, is that Corbyn didn't lose the last election because of anti-Semitism, but because of Brexit. Well, superficially, that is correct. But I've drawn up and I've posted a link to my blog, 31 red wall seats, where the decline in Labour support didn't begin with Brexit. It began long before. There are many explanations for the decline in class consciousness. Brexit symbolised that. So superficially, yes, it was about Brexit, but the causes of it are actually far, far deeper. And that's why I disagree with Stan. Thank you.
Thank you. Vic, I'm afraid we'll need to move on now. You have made a contribution already. So if you'd like to post a comment in the chat, then maybe Tony can pick it up there. Thank you very much. And we're going to move on now to some action, some direct action with Norman. Let's find you, Norman. Norman's going to talk about not the Ford inquiry and about how we actually engage in direct action. Go ahead, Norman.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so direct action is the theme of my contribution. I think we are in a desperate situation. We have a leadership, we have a majority of MPs, and we have a totally corrupt bureaucracy who are hell-bent on driving this party back to the days of Tony Blair. Whatever the failings of the Corbyn years, a huge step forward in terms of Labour Party activism was made, and that is all likely to be lost unless we fight back. Yes, we can send in motions. Yes, we can get delegates to conference. Yes, we can do all that, and I'm all in favour of it. But how likely is the leadership to take notice of whatever we do on those terms? They've already been obviously trying to subvert democracy throughout the party by suspending members. I myself am the suspended chair of South Thanet. They've suspended members left, right and centre. They've expelled good members. They've stopped us. They've suspended CLPs, as in West Ham and East Ham. They have done their darndest to stop this party democratically asserting its rights. The left in particular, they've obviously discriminated against the left. Left, right, and left, not left, right, and centre, just left, right, and left. They have basically tried to stop us functioning. So what can we do? Well, people often talk about the importance of the link with the trade unions. Well, in this situation, we have to do what we do, perhaps the most powerful weapons that unions have to fall back on when all attempts to negotiate fail, which is direct action. Now, direct action is not easy, but we can take it up. We have to it has to be horses for courses. The Labour Party has got regional offices throughout the country. The Labour MPs have got constituency offices. We have to target those centres. We have to have placards, we have to have slogans, we have to have a plan to spread our members across these different centres and take them up and demand a change. Demand things stop happening, demand a change for the future. And we have to, very importantly, broaden our campaign. One of the big things that they're going to do, and the media is very complicit in this, and the Labour Party know very well how the Labour Party leadership know very well how they will portray this as an internal squabble. This is just the Labour Party fighting amongst itself. But we've got to broaden our campaign. If we're going out on the streets, which is what I'm arguing, as COVID restrictions are lifted, we can do, then if we're going out in the streets, we've got to show what we're all about. And this is a matter for debate, but I think the most powerful issue that we've got to appeal on is democracy, because democracy is being attacked and annihilated in many cases in the Labour Party. There is whole CLPs like my own that can do almost nothing because they're denied contact with their members. Maybe people have seen the Ken Loach letter, which was published in Labour Briefing and taken up elsewhere. He portrays how in Bath CLP, the regional officials just basically stop the CLP from functioning. They stop you communicating with your members directly. They are uncooperative. They cancel your meetings. They rule motions, not competent business. This is not democracy. This is a shroud in democracy. And that's where we can attack the Labour Party, because the Labour Party masquerades as a democratic party. It claims to be a more democratic party than its competitors, than the Tories. And are they? Are they democratic? Of course they aren't. They are being totally undemocratic. But it's worse than that, because it's a pretense of democracy. They're trying to pretend they are a democratic party when they are doing everything they can to stop democracy. So we have to take direct action to expose that. So that's why we need a slogan. I'm not a slogan maker, but my suggestion was something along the lines of, we want democracy. You have something simple that you can chant, that you put on posters, that you put on T-shirts, that you put on mugs, and you embarrass the Labour Party at every turn. And when I mentioned the different offices that you can go outside, but obviously there's another thing. As COVID lockdown is lifted, Starmer himself will be out and about. We saw him on the outside a pub even not so long ago, being totally embarrassed by somebody. Well, that's what members and supporters of LIEN can do. They'll know where Starmer is going to be next, and we go out and we embarrass him. We embarrass him at every turn. But we have slogans and logos which make it clear to the public what we're all about, and that's what we've basically got to do. So essentially, we have to take the campaign to the outside world, and we have to make ourselves clear to the outside world. Part of the direct action that we're doing, and this is a sort of slightly different aspect of it in a way, the Ford inquiry, as people may know, is an inquiry into the leaked report, which was the most, for anyone who hasn't read it, is the most appalling expose of what's been going on amongst our paid officials, and the way they try to sabotage and undermine the general election, and obviously lost the Labour Party a considerable amount of votes by trying to interfere with what was going on. Who knows? Some people think we might have actually won the 2017 election if we hadn't had our own people trying to undermine everything we did. And they did in South Thanet, I tell you, they did a hell of a good job of undermining us. They gave us a candidate who was the least qualified candidate to run, and then proceeded to try to demoralize everybody involved in the campaign. So they did a pretty good job in some areas. They failed miserably in others. But the Ford inquiry is an inquiry into that leaked report. And they basically had 1,000 submissions from individuals and organizations. And I feel from my communications with the inquiry that it will never see the light of day, or if it does see the light of day, it will be in a very attenuated form. We will only see edited features of it, and it won't be what we're hoping for. But I don't know. I mean, Martin Ford is an interesting character. He's the barrister who's running it, and he's emailed me saying he is going to attempt to publish aspects of that report. I will be amazed if he manages to reflect what I know to be the general tenor of people's submissions to it, which is a catalogue of disgraceful shenanigans within the Labour Party. The Not the Ford inquiry is an event which is coming up on June the 5th. And we're basically going to be running it with other left-wing organizations. We haven't finalized the details of it yet, but it'll be something where we will give the opportunity for people who want to make submissions to the Ford inquiry, and possibly already made their submissions, to say, well, if you've got 5 minutes to make your submission, here we go, make it here in a Zoom type meeting, and we will basically see what the basic things that people would say to Ford, and then we will challenge the Labour Party to say, well, is this what Ford would report back if he was allowed to report back what these people are saying? It's an opportunity. It's a direct action in the sense that it's a meeting and a protest all rolled into one. And if it's successful, then who knows? Maybe we'll do a part 2 of Ford, Not the Ford inquiry. Yeah. So please do come to that, because it's going to be a very, I'm sure, interesting and entertaining event. But essentially, also what I'd say is, if you have ideas and experience of direct action, and I'm sure there are people out there who have, because there are people there who were involved, I'm sure, in the action or in the miners' strike and in other bits of industrial action. We need your experience. We need your input. We want people to come together and work out what the best way. We haven't got obviously huge resources. We're not We're not like a big trade union. We're a much smaller operation. So we have to use our resources wisely. But we can do it. I believe we can actually make a big impact on the Labour Party leadership's totally and utterly unjust and unfair and undemocratic attempt to take this party back to the days of Tony Blair. And I think I'll leave it there. But give your input, give your ideas. That's
thank you,
exactly
Norman.
what we need. Thanks.
Yeah, so there's a good starter then. Do come along on June the 5th. So please raise your hands now if you want to add further ideas, you want to ask Norman any questions, if you want to make a contribution. I think Tina, you had your hand up first. Thank you. Then Jonathan.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Norman, for that. That was great. I was going to speak about the Ford inquiry a little bit, or not the Ford inquiry, as it happens. I'm speaking it now with my Labour Against the Witch Hunt hat on, because Tony and I spent a considerable amount of time working on a submission from Labour Against the Witch Hunt to the Ford inquiry. I've posted the link in the chat, and it's very good because it doesn't just say this happened to me or the other person, but it goes through what are problems with the definition of anti-Semitism, what is the problem with the evidence in the leaked report, etc. And I think we were pretty much the only organization that also pointed out that the leaked report doesn't just show how the right sabotaged Corbyn at every corner, but it also shows, unfortunately, how Corbyn and Jenny Formby sort of attack the left. And the leaked report has quite a few examples, unfortunately, of where, for example, Jenny Formby very, very happily reports how she got Chris Williamson out, etc. So the leaked report really encapsulates all the problems that we had in the last 6 years and what went wrong. So I think not the Ford inquiry will look at both, just not just what the right did to us, but also what we did to ourselves, and that was a huge part of why we were defeated in the end.
Yeah, thanks, Tina. And we need to make it as public as possible because we need to be heard and the truth needs to come out. So thank you. Next, we have Jonathan.
Good evening, comrades. Sorry if what I'm about to say is a bit more of common knowledge to everyone, but I'm based in Rochester in Strood CLP, and I've gotten a bit of word through my CLP that Starmer and some of the national leadership want to start spending a lot more time, a lot more attention and resources around the Southeast. My interpretation of that is that they want to sort of reorient the party heartlands to Southeast, away from the seats that they've lost. And I understand Starmer is meant to be touring some of the CLPs and areas that they want to focus on, some of the areas that they want to make into swing and hopefully take. So if we're going to be doing direct action, I think that's a good opportunity for us. He's meant to be attending a lot of CLP meetings in the area, as well as doing some public events is what I got the understanding of. So if we're able to link up, and I like Norman's idea of publicly embarrassing him more. I don't know if he'll realize he's being embarrassed. He seems a bit clueless in that. But I mean, moments like that I think would be a good place to start.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you, Jonathan. Gavin's gone. There he is. Go ahead, Gavin. We can't see you.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you okay.
I'm sorry, I don't have a camera. I just wanted to ask a quick question about the direct action stuff, because we've got another by-election coming up soon, the Botley and Spen one, I think. So I think we need to make sure that they don't parachute another candidate that has nothing to do with the constituency, like they did with Hartlepool, because they got a former Remainer to come and sit in a seat in a constituency that had 69 point something % leave votes as well. And I've seen this in the past elections in 2017 and 2019 in Southampton Itchen. They've got to try and win the seat. We would have won the seats. It was so close. The first time, I think in 2017, they brought in some Oxford graduate who had nothing to do with Southampton Itchen. So I think that's a big problem that we really need to publicly protest. And it ties in with democratizing the party, making sure that the local CLP chooses the candidates and has the full, judgment on who gets to stand there, not the PLP. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The regional office parachuted candidates into one of our most winnable seats in Bristol City, and of course they lost both seats. So yeah, it's a common experience, I'm afraid. Does anyone else have any questions or suggestions on the direct action to Norman? Before we ask Norman to feedback if he wants to, please raise your hand. Clearly T-shirts outside regional office and placards outside regional offices on Fridays when the MPs might be there, conniving with the regional office staff might be a good idea. I can't see any other hands up. Do you just want to provide some final feedback, Norman, before we move on?
I think so. The Strode, the suggestion from the Comrade from Strode is a brilliant one. If Starmer is going to be doing the rounds around that part of the world, then we should organise to meet and greet him. And I think yes, if for the by-election that was just mentioned, obviously the great advantage of us being out in strength there is there'll be a lot of media attention there as well. And all people who are going for direct action know that getting media attention, if you possibly can, get the cameras, etc., is going to be a very important thing. So yeah, and I would urge people to email us in here at LIEN. The email address is on the website. Email us in with your ideas, and email us with any suggestions, especially for slogans of any kind that you wish to send in as well. And I think Tina's idea of covering the all aspects of what happened in the leaked report, not just the evidence of the right-wing saboteurs, is a good one. But yeah, so I think there's a kind of a lot of scope for some interesting stuff to do in the future.
Yeah, and we'll make it enjoyable too, because it's so important doing this. So thank you, Norman. And we'll hear a little bit more about the things we're doing, because we're now going to go on to the stuff that the working groups have been doing since the last
Can I mention one thing in this?
Yeah, go on, Tina.
Sorry, is that direct action always sounds like you have to have 100 people doing something, or occupy something, and you need, unless you can get 50 people together, etc. It's just, even if it's one or two of you, take a picture holding up a placard and send it to us. It looks really good, even with one or two people. Nobody knows it was just you two, but we can put it out on our social media, etc. And that it really looks good, especially if people do different things in front of different offices, or etc. So you don't need 100 people to do it.
We'll put out a DIY direct action thing to everybody, so that to give them some tips and clues on what to do, as well as appealing for people to come up with suggestions. But yes, that's it's direct action with just 2 or 3 people in a placard and somebody taking photos. But always take the photos of whatever you do. It's a critical thing, and then send them to us or to the local press or wherever you can.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's a great idea. Thank you for that, Tina. So we're going to go on to the working groups now, and each of the working groups is going to tell us what they've been doing. We've got a lead speaker for each of one of those. They'll all spend a few minutes, around 3 minutes, explaining the work that they've been doing, and then we'll have questions and contributions at the end of all of the contributions from them. So first of all, we're going to hear from the press, social media and outreach group, including the work that's being done on the newsletter that you would have been receiving. And it's over to Terry Deans. Can find you.
Hello.
Where is he? There he is.
Hi there. Thank you, Esther. Thanks very much. Just want to say well done to everybody for organising this event tonight again. It's a good job. Well done, everybody. There's a couple of things I wanted to say before I kick off about the press and social media thing. I just want to say thank you to Halima Hassan and to Edward Davies for the contribution. It's great to see young people coming through the Corbyn legacy lives on in you, and it's good to see that. I hear, in my opinion, I'm somebody who just joined the Labour Party quite old, at 55 years old, never voted in my life before, never got involved in politics. And so I was inspired by Corbyn, and I want that legacy to be a boost and an inspiration to other people. And Edward and Halima encapsulate that for me. So thank you to them for their contribution tonight. I think there's a lot of positivity from the Corbyn era, despite the mistakes, which has been inspirational and motivational. We need to build on that. And also, we need to bear in mind that the right's job in all this is to demoralise and to undermine us. After all, the right wing, including Tories and some people in our own party who's been highlighted by others, it's their job to demoralise and undermine us, because they are the establishment. They're an imperialist elements of the establishment, which is going around the world demoralising and undermining people, of which I'm a victim of, like so many people around the world, isn't, not just the Palestinians. So I just want to say well done to everybody for sticking in there, and those who have left the party. I understand, and I hope you've got a home. Please join LIEN and come and help us to fight back and be proactive. On the social media working group, Norman Thomas has done some fantastic work with the press releases. We've managed to outreach to places like the Canary, Morning Star, Double Down News, various other places, Squawk Box, and the whole role of the social media and working group, working group is to do that, to increase our outreach, and also to use things like our social media, which is the Twitter, which has now got over 700 followers, and our Facebook groups and pages, and our Facebook group is now approaching 1,000. So there is some good work going on already. We need to do more. That's always the phrase, isn't it? Everybody says. So we need to just grow those numbers. And also, if anybody, there's going to be a press and social media working group. We've had one already a couple of weeks ago. We're going to have a follow-up for that, which I'll be announcing soon. So please look on the Facebook groups, the Facebook pages, the newsletters, as was mentioned by Esther, sorry, a moment ago, which Norman has been fantastic at doing. Subscribe to that. Go onto the website. You get all the details for that. You get a subscription to the newsletter, and you can follow what's going on. But importantly, Norman alluded to it earlier on, or somebody did. Sorry if I'm getting my names mixed up. There's so many people speaking, but talking about contributing. There's people out there who've got great ideas, activists, campaigners. Come and join the working groups. Come and join the press and social media working groups. Help us out. We're just volunteers, the same as you guys. There's lots of brains out there, and we need to tap into everybody. Our collective strength is what we're best at. I think I'm going to finish on that. And if anybody wants to ask any questions or make any contributions, please do. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Contributions after everyone's spoken, but thanks for that. And we're now going over to changing the Labour Party with Norman.
Oops. Yes, sorry. Just adjusting my screen here. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's better. Changing Labour, changing the Labour Party is the working group. We've had 2 meetings now of the working group. The basic theme is what can we change in the Labour Party? How do we change the Labour Party? What sort of Labour Party do we want? We've got basically a hierarchical, deeply hierarchical organisation, which to compound its hierarchical organisation, which is kind of inbuilt anyway, it's also, obviously totally corrupt. And you've got unfair disciplinary systems. The idea that you're going to get a fair hearing if you're on the left, if somebody complains about you, is kind of joke, really. I mean, people they look for things to complain to you about. You are then put in. They concoct some sort of allegations against you, which may have some or may not have some bearing on the truth, and then they suspend you, or maybe they expel you, because one of the easiest ways of expelling people is to
social media
allege that you're basically that you've given support to somebody like Chris Williamson. And once my own partner, Christine Tang, wished good luck to Chris Williamson, and that was enough to actually expel her out of the party. No hearing, nothing. Just a notice of suspension and then a notice of expulsion. And that sort of thing has been happening across the country. So Changing Labour is looking at how we would have new structures that would prevent that kind of a blatant unfairness happening. We've had 2 contributions from our members so far, one which is both of which look at how you can attack the hierarchical organisation in the Labour Party and how you can give power bottom up to the members from the grassroots up. I think what we're going to do is do a kind of a synthesis from the 2 reports where we pull out some of the main points and then circulate that for more comments and more amendments. But yeah, I mean, we're open to people to come forward. It always strikes me that probably there are people who've already come up with blueprints for better grassroots-led Labour Party organisations, and we'd be very interested in looking at them because we need input. We need people to. It's a huge task, obviously, to change a political party in how it works, and good ideas and good proposals for how we change it would be really, really helpful. So yeah, get involved, contact us through LIEN, and you'll find out when the next meeting of Changing Labour is. We haven't got a scheduled meeting yet, but we will have one soon. So yeah, get in touch and we will send you the details.
Thank you. So all you need to become a member of one of our working groups is that you need to be a member, but you need to want to work with us. So yeah, please contact us if you want to contribute more. And next, all the way from Australia, and no doubt really, really early in the morning and freezing cold, is Neil. It's Dr. Neil Todd to talk to us about the witch hunt analysis group. Are you there, Neil? Let's find you. Oh, there you are.
You're muted.
You are muted, Neil.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Right, thank you, Essie. Yes, I am here in the penal colony of New South Wales for my sins, and it is indeed an ungodly hour, but pleased to be with you. So yeah, despite the distance, thanks to Zoom technology, I have been able to continue to be active. Yeah, so the witch hunt analysis group, essentially what do? We are basically gather information and use that information for campaigning. And as part of this information gathering and processing procedure, I suppose, yeah, we have a kind of common view of the witch hunt as a kind of quasi-judicial process. So you've got this network of trolls, local trolls who've been manufacturing these fake anti-Semitism complaints on an industrial scale. Then we have the anonymous investigators as part of the general and legal unit who process these fake allegations, largely fake allegations. Then, of course, you have the adjudicators in the form of the NEC, which is now run by the right wing of the party. So effectively, they control all aspects of this process. And of course, you have the victims, the complainants, sorry, the defendants who have been victims of this mass purge. With that analytical view, we've been basically looking at different aspects of that and gathering statistics on it. And one way we've been doing that is in form of a questionnaire, which we have circulated to all members of the Labour in Exile network. And we had some responses to that, from which we've been able to make inferences. And I've actually drawn up, or we are drawing up a report on that, which is going to be circulated very shortly. Although we've had some responses, we still want more. So when that report goes around, we'd be very keen for you all to make a contribution to that. Another thing we've been doing, in addition to gathering the information, we've also been informing people. So we've held so far 2 so-called purge briefing meetings. We held one on the 20th of February. We held another one recently on the 30th of April. Both of those were videoed. They were all very well attended and with excellent contributions. So there's recordings of that. And so if you weren't able to attend that, I would strongly urge you to view the video, which I believe that Terry is putting something out there on the chat. Okay, so one other important thing we've been involved in is campaigning against so-called fast-track procedures. As we've heard at length from Tony and others, one of the biggest errors that people made was the capitulation in 2018 to the IHRA bogus definition of anti-Semitism, which enabled the network of trolls to manufacture these fake anti-Semitism complaints. But another major error was rolling over on so-called fast-track procedures at the 2019 conference, which essentially enabled the right wing of the party to mass process these fake allegations without any reference to the NCC. Previously, if the party wanted to expel you, they had to refer you to the NCC, which at least gave a kind of a token of natural justice, even if in reality it might have been a kangaroo court. But now they've dispensed with that completely. So we now, since 2019, the purge has been proceeded literally on mass processing without any hearing at all. So we produced a resolution on that, model resolution, which has been circulating around, and we strongly urge you, if you're still a member of the Labour Party, to promote that resolution, with a view to having, at the next conference, to having all those changes scrapped in entirety. Finally, we have been producing another questionnaire, this time focusing on the witch hunters themselves. It's a witch hunter activity questionnaire. A lot of people have been victims of these local trolls, many of them are very aggressive, unpleasant individuals who seem to spend all their time trawling through social media accounts. So we want to find out information about those people with a view to making complaints about them. Okay, I think that's about it. I'm sorry if I've been a little bit incoherent, but there you go, all the way from New South Wales. Okay,
thank you for the loads of work you've been doing on the WAG, Neil, and obviously for getting up at such an early hour. Thank you so much for joining us. We're now going back to Tony, who's going to talk about the work that he's doing in the anti-racism and anti-Semitism working group. Thanks, Tony. Can you unmute yourself? Thank you.
Have I unmuted? Yes.
Yes, you have.
Yes, we've heard the Racism and Anti-Semitism Working Group has met twice. The last time was nearly 2 weeks ago. We have discussed really 2 things. Firstly, we had a very extensive discussion on the Jerusalem Declaration and anti-Semitism in the
Tony, can you look in the camera, please?
Sorry, yes, it's
that's better.
As you know, my camera is fairly wobbly. We discussed the Jerusalem Declaration of Anti-Semitism in the context of the fight against the IHRA, and the position we adopted was the one I outlined when I was speaking previously, namely that where the IHRA has been adopted, then we would push for the Jerusalem Declaration to be adopted in its place, and that was agreed, say, after quite a lengthy discussion. The second thing that we've done, and we're going to draw that up, or I'm going to draw up a draft, is that we're actually going to produce a 4-page mini pamphlet, if you like, or A3 leaflet, the title of which will basically be why there was never an anti-Semitism problem in the Labour Party to begin with, because we have a problem in the Labour Party that the left, or the majority of the left, the momentum left, still does not get it, that the anti-Semitism allegations, the whole anti-Semitism crisis was manufactured with the aim of getting rid of Corbyn, because when Corbyn was elected in 2015, that was a great shock to the powers that be, that someone who'd been an anti-imperialist, who'd called Israel a rogue state, who opposed American war plans in the Middle East and so on, had been surprisingly elected to become leader of the second major party in Britain, which historically has had a close, indeed a special relationship with the United States. So very soon after, in fact, not even after, even before Corbyn was elected, the Daily Mail and the Jewish Chronicle started running with stories about anti-Semitism. Those of you with good memories, and if you don't have good memories, Google it. The Daily Mail led on a story that Corbyn was friends with and associated with with a Holocaust denier named Paul Eisen. And then it continued. Firstly, it was Gerald Kaufman was called out for comments that he made about Jewish funding of the Tory party via the Conservative Friends of Israel. Then there was the wholly bogus and fake campaign around Oxford University Labour Club. The Labour Club had agreed to support the Israel Apartheid Week, and their chair resigned, claiming they had a problem with Jews. And so it snowballed. And of course, we know after the 2017 general election, it was renewed with vigor. We had this completely fake controversy over a mural, if you remember, in the East End in Tower Hamlets, which was held to be anti-Semitic. Corbyn had said it shouldn't be erased on the grounds of free speech, and this was blown up into a massive campaign. The Board of Deputies even held an anti-racist, so-called, inverted commas, demonstration outside the House of Parliament, and people like Ian Paisley Jr. and even Norman Tebbit took part in what must be the first time they've ever attended anything with the banner anti-racist, but of course it wasn't anti-racist. This was the only such demonstration the Board of Deputies have held. Throughout the years of Oswald Mosley, throughout the years of the National Front, the BNP and so on, they've turned a blind eye, but when it came to defending Israel, then the Board of Deputies was up there. So I think it's important for us, for the left, if it's ever going to recover its position in the Labour Party, to deal with what it was that caused Corbyn, in essence, to be led to defeat. And I think that was the major cause, because it discredited him and the left leadership, which bought into this whole nonsense. So the idea is to produce something which we can then use in the CLPs and in other groups to actually explain why it is that the anti-Semitism crisis was no crisis at all. It was a crisis of the right not accepting the democratically elected leadership of the Labour Party. So those are the two issues. And of course, a third one is it's not just an anti-Semitism group, it's also about racism. And we sometimes forget that the Labour Party has a particularly god-awful record on genuine racism in this society. That is racism against black people, asylum seekers, and so on. And we saw that with Howard Beckett. He tweeted the other day that if anyone should be deported, it's Priti Patel, which I think most people would agree with. Immediately, he was suspended on the grounds that this was somehow a dog whistle and he was bowing to racism. Absolute rubbish. He wasn't suggesting Priti Patel should be deported because she's black, but because she's a racist. The fact that she's superficially black is absolutely irrelevant to her politics. So the right in the Labour Party, and under Alan Johnson, it was New Labour who first introduced the hostile environment policy. Labour has a god-awful record when it comes to fighting genuine racism. Of course, anti-Semitism is the false anti-racism of the right. And so I think we have to dispel this. When Corbyn was suspended, the first thing that Momentum did was put out a press statement saying that the suspension of Corbyn undermined the fight against anti-Semitism. They still don't get it. And I think that's one of our jobs, is to actually make sure that people understand where the anti-Semitism campaign came from.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Tony. I know there's some people that want to come back on that, but we'll hear from Christine and from Terry and Becky before we come back to you. So Christine, otherwise called Norman, over to you.
Thanks. I'm Christine Tong, not Norman Thomas, which is on my screen. I'm the convener for the disability group in LIEN. We're now calling ourselves the Labour Disability Group, and we're giving ourselves some kind of official status like that, I think. There are 14 million disabled people in the UK, and they're not being represented properly, and they're not being represented by the Labour Party in particular. The Labour Party isn't doing much to challenge the government on the kind of issues that we care about. And the idea of our group is to look for the things that we want Labour to be talking about, and pushing Labour Party people and CLPs to do the things that we think should be done, and represent disabled people properly. I was expelled from South Thanet. I was the disability officer and the temporary secretary. There's now no one in the South Thanet CLP representing disability. And there are lots and lots of CLPs where they don't have disability officers. And if they do have them, they're not always disabled people. So, you know, they're not being encouraged to take part in politics. The idea of our group is that there are now 11 members of the working group of disabled people and carers, because carers are very important as well. And we're members and non-members. And I see disability issues falling into three categories: access, policy, and attitude. And what we're trying to do is to come up regularly with issues that fit under those categories and then send them off to anyone in the Labour Party, and in particular the minister, the shadow minister for disability, Vicky Foxcroft. I keep calling her Foxtrot. Sorry if I do it again. I'm likely to. So the things that we've come up with first under access, we'd like all meetings of Labour Party to be either Zoom or hybrid Zoom and face-to-face, because access into meetings is really important for disabled people. The number of meetings I've been to where they can't get wheelchairs in, or if they can get wheelchairs in, there isn't a disabled toilet, or meetings are upstairs with, you know, steep steps and no handrails, things like that. So, so Zoom has solved a lot of those problems. In terms of policy, there's what's happened recently is that the charges for social care have gone up, and benefits haven't gone up to match that. So that's a very simple thing that the Labour Party should be making a huge fuss about, and we should be making a huge fuss about. Attitude, I identified neglect as being the thing that we've suffered from the Labour Party most, in that they haven't really, they've had disability officers for about 5 years now in a voting position on executive committees, but they're not being encouraged to actually go on executive committees. It's not being made easy for them. So we want to get around that attitude of neglect, and we want people to be encouraged to speak up for themselves and be able to represent themselves in politics. And that's part of what access is having access to the politics, as well as the buildings where the politics take place and the decisions are made. I put together a short email to go to various people. If you ask me, I can send it to you as well, which summarise those issues. I sent it to Vicky Foxcroft, and she's asked for a meeting, which I thought was great progress.
Yeah, good.
Whether she turns up and what comes as a result of it, I don't know, but at least we've got ourselves noticed in the official Labour Party. And I'm calling ourselves, as I said, the Labour Disability Group, because I think if we call ourselves exiles, then we're putting ourselves kind of outside the party systems. I think we're a shadow disability group. And I think we're probably going to be more powerful than the disability officers that already exist, who are being silenced by fear of speaking out, I think. Sorry, I just want to say, if you want to join, please contact me. There are 11 members of the working group. We've had one meeting on Zoom, and that was very productive and very pleasant to be able to talk to people and see people face to face. So get in touch and join the group, please.
That's
Thanks.
great work, Christine. I really like the fact that you've taken on the Labour Disability Group label. I think that's brilliant, and thank you for
We're it now.
And please, yeah, as Christine says, please join. And finally, we're going to talk for a little bit. Becky's going to talk for a little bit about the Shadow CLP workshop that we're planning. I think it's down for Terry and Becky, but I think Becky, you're going to pick this one up.
Hi.
Hello.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
When Labour in Exile was set up, one of the things that we hoped to do was to set up shadow groups, shadow CLPs, it doesn't really matter what you call it, but that in each constituency, people who had been exiled, either through the formal processes of the Labour Party, or people who resigned because they were in such despair, but Labour people, a way of keeping them together in a locality. So in the next 10 days, Terry Deans and I are going to set up a workshop about setting up a shadow CLP, a group, a pressure group in your areas. So we'll put up a notice on our Facebook page and on Twitter. And I think if as many people from, different areas could come to that, then we could build these structures that can become a presence for Labour. And I think this links very much with what Norman was saying earlier about direct action. Obviously, the last 18 months have been very difficult for direct action, but now with COVID restrictions opening up a little bit, I think more people would be willing to do some direct action locally or nearby. And I'll just give you a little example of that. I'm in Hove constituency down on the south coast, and my Labour MP is somebody called Peter Kyle. He's an officer of Labour Friends of Israel. In the first leadership, in the chicken coup election, in the first leadership election, he supported Liz Kendall, Miss 4%. In the chicken coup, he supported Owen Smith. In the most recent one, he supported Jess Phillips. And he's an absolute shocker, this bloke. And Starmer has just appointed him Shadow Schools Minister. And I have a lovely picture of Peter Kyle sitting in front of a big Sussex Friends of Israel banner saying, proudly supporting Israel, which he does. And Starmer has just promoted him. So locally, one of the things that we will be doing is organising, as Norman says, doesn't matter if it's 1, 2, 10 people, however many come, to just hold up some placards outside his office on Fridays, his constituency day, to put pressure on him to show we know what he's done. Huge amounts of people have been expelled in Hove. We know what he's done. We know who he is. We know what he believes in, and we don't like it. So that's the sort of thing that local structures, shadow structures, labour in exile structures could do. So when Terry and I fix the date for the workshop, we'll publicise it. And I do hope people from all different areas can come. Thank you, Esther.
That's brilliant, Rebecca. Thank you. Thank you very much. So look forward to hearing about what comes out of that workshop, and get all your photos to us.
Indeed.
So, indeed. So we're just going to assemble the panel of speakers now on the working groups for your final questions and comments. And just a reminder,
the coffee mornings, evenings.
Oh, we haven't got. Have I missed that one?
Yep.
Oh yeah, it's on the next page. Sorry, Vanda. Faraz, do you want to tell us about your coffee mornings? Where are you?
Faraz, you moved it.
Hello, yes. Hello there, everyone. Thanks for attending the meeting. And the informal coffee mornings have also been extended to Friday evenings. We call them Socialist Friday Fish and Chips. It's a very informal thing, and we do make jokes, but I haven't included them here. There's face-to-face contact, which is very important for team building and psychology. It's a dire human need, and it's exactly opposite to what Keir Starmer's party stands for. Very turgid and dictatorial. So in an effort to encourage you to attend these chats, I'm going to very quickly go through all the things that have been mentioned by attendees. So it's a way of getting your voice heard. In March, we had 6 meetings altogether, 7. In March, we had a meeting, and it was expressed that people enjoyed talking with left people in the Labour Party online, especially during the pandemic. We also discussed things about gardening. But in the points here, I'll stick to political items. In April, we had quite a few meetings. At the beginning of April, people mentioned how patronising some CLPs were, and they totally ignored Corbyn's denial of the whip, despite him being previous leader of the party. Always discussed that and joked about was the political split among family members, and led to some hilarious situations. The importance of building a left database, apart from the one that Momentum has, who are unfortunately still promoting fake anti-Semitism. And people admitted that they had voted for Starmer, and they deeply regret it. Some of them left the Labour Party after Corbyn put out the whip for Article 50 because of that issue, but they said they soon rejoined because they saw how important it was to stay in the Labour Party. The proportional representation.
We're losing you. Do you think you could? Do you think you could wind up now so that we could? Because
yes. So there's 17 million people who don't vote out there, and we need your input to get them to vote and take part in politics against the economical lies like the deficit myth and the corruption in the old boys network. So please do attend. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. So we do have a massive conflict now, because somebody just posted that Double Down News has got Palestine under attack at 8 o'clock with Jeremy Corbyn. So I think probably, and the link is in the chat. So I think probably a lot of people will want to leave, but there have been some people with their hands up for some time. So we'll take comments from them. I think probably we should try to finish in a couple of minutes, unless there's a massive protest otherwise in the chat, or loads of people put their hands up. So Stan, can you very briefly say what you wanted to say, please?
Yeah, no, I wanted to respond to Norman talking about how to change Labour. Just to say that Labour Party Marxists started up in 2011, I think. And we've got on the website, labourpartymarxist.org.uk, you can see the aims which go through that issue, you know. And I think, I mean, along with that, I'd say that we've got these various movements going on now in Labour, like Labour Against the Witch Hunt first, and then Labour Left Alliance, and then this Labour in Exile network. And it's all about what we're against, and sort of tactical questions about how to, you know, how to campaign, because people are outraged at what's happened to them. What we need to do to get lasting unity, you have to work out what you're for. And to be, you know, to come to the point, like if you get a Labour government again, which is trying to run capitalism, it will demoralise the workers' movement. We need to be clear about our socialist aim and what that means. So I think there's a lot of discussion to be done. And the comrades here from Socialist Appeal, for example, just like Labour Party Marxists, have been around a long time, you know, and done a lot of thought for it. So we need to debate those differences. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan, and Gavin, and then we need to, I think Terry wants to say a word, and then we need to sum up. Gavin, over to you. Can you unmute, please?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Ah, all right, thank you. I just want to finish off on the situation with Howard Beckett, because I don't think we can. The witch hunts against the left aren't going to stop until we get rid of Keir Starmer. So we need to, you know, decide on what the left stands for. But we do need like the broad left to come together and push Starmer out. And I think having Howard Beckett, you know, join in that effort would probably be a good idea. So I don't know if we could do some sort of simultaneous push for a no confidence motion across all the CLPs, bring in the trade unions as well. And, you know, like I said, like a sign as well that says like a slogan, Starmer out, democracy in, something like that.
Yeah, thank you.
We'd probably, you know, have some sort of like push together, not in little groups splintered off. If we could make an event to organize something like that. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Gavin, and thank you for your slogan. It rhymed. It fits quite well into a chant, I think, as well. So I know that Terry just wanted to say a couple of words to just to support what Becky was saying about the shadow workshop. Go ahead, Terry.
Yeah. Like I know we want to get away, so I'll keep it really brief. It's just that there's been a few success stories around the country where people have got shadow CLPs. People got different names for it. We've had it going in Plymouth in different guises. There's been success stories. So the workshop is basically going to show people how to keep in contact with each other, how to find your comrades, how to compile databases, how to communicate with each other, whether you're inside or outside the party. But of course, it has to feed inside the party machinery. And in Plymouth Moorview, for example, although we didn't call ourselves a shadow CLP, we moved our CLP from being a right-wing controlled unit in the first 3 or 4 years that I joined the party into winning successful left motions, getting people nominated and put into positions. So that's what we're going to try and do, guys. That's the whole point of it. So the workshop will give people ideas about how to do that. And again, if anybody has got experience of doing similar things, please come along and give us your tips. That was all. Thanks, Esther.
Thank you so much, Terry, and thank you, everybody. And just a reminder, we hope you'll come to our next meeting. The next meeting is going to be for members only, but it will be live streamed on the Facebook page, so anyone will be able to watch it in the whole wide world. So we hope to see you again then. Thank you everybody for your contributions. Carry on the fight, solidarity.